Wahuni se tenahe yutiso tukunkaha yukihirori ziniawon onki e kahnyarake o vistanorum o nyare tahne kahuistarako o nyare. Kite niase nauti huayake o naget yahni hawe tiwahya do kawineha. Ti onas sahnawe tinu yayo udum yaa wahya takahto knahotak wahikati deostarate. Watu tistirihan wahnikawe wahyat konsera nahotaki tinatiostarate. Kite niase ja dorat studinerako untinoti kanaskuioski ohjare koa. Wahnitsani kene ekjaudisko perhake sokwa kuatiskoko tahn lauti hueakun wa kuatia tita jamsa kuatia tahawe. Ahontuk jamsanawe kite niase ja dorats ne unque ata taktat humnes soknarum takahtus sinjotetius watheki knataka humakum vatake. Se ona ja wahni narho ungo kwahnektia kunehrako sinjoti kanaskui skionjare ko wata sinjoti dodia taswathe. Ja tohni sarako kuantin tekionjare koa. Kare one ehnioriti wakini koanha doasa kairi kahvista extinatskahu. Ta'nu wachonawara sikiniyahtine onaket kahmuea. Signorti wachatehian gigatekiniaso nare koa. Kare ona ksitamtaneko tahnu anocha. Ta'nu atirum kuatinum das. Kare ona ja kahewe signorti wachatehian ona kti oskenundum ta'nu skanyumsa ne kuatinum te. Kare ona ki ehniorti wachatehian wakini kweni wakini yaka itskana ahtotum geniteru ta'nu wachate soknum wesmuha wahikatse wako terune. Tiknu wesum inatu hetstani kiohnare koa. Kwasa wajera satakanum tihastum kotohetse kiutidastum zinidzi yutnakahtanchum. Kumadidio nekutitsena ekja taka wahrotarhum zinatu hetstum. So wajeres nona yokahawe zinum dahere ajatohetste. Zinina kininum daratne, sok ankini suyuni tok chankene. Wakuadirio na karhagum, wakudine katkote, ta ne ohmzako wakuatnutstumni.
Mother Earth is under assault. Complete assault. Every which way you can think of it, whether it's pipelines, whether it's coal, whether it's deep sea drilling, any way that you can imagine, she's under assault. And time's running short. It's like you can't take a body and take out its liver, take out its heart, drain its veins. You can't do that. And that's what we're doing. And that body's going to die. And when that body dies, we're dead. So people got to wake up and they got to realize that they think this will bring them money. They think this will bring them progress. It's not going to bring anything. And even if it brings money, when the earth dies, you won't be able to breathe, eat, drink, do anything with that money. It's useless. So what's more important, life or money? And if you're not worried about yourself because you think you're old or, well, everybody's going to die anyways, what about your children's children's children? You have a responsibility. And further than that, what about all those that can't speak for themselves, the animals, the fish, the birds, the plants? They can't speak for themselves. And they were in existence for millennia before us. And they lived in harmony. They didn't destroy anything. But they can't speak for themselves and we're destroying them. They're dying at fast rates. So we're responsible for the future generations. We're responsible for all life that can't speak for itself. And we better wake up or we're all going to be gone.
We're in a crisis in this country right now. We have a pipeline, a pre-existing pipeline, but we have a pipeline that's coming through that they're trying to build on an old pipeline, an ancient pipeline that was built around the 50s onward. and we're in a water crisis. So it's not a matter about if the pipeline's going to explode, it's when and where it's going to explode, and it's placing all of our water at risk. So that's why I'm here today to fight for the water and for our life. Without water, there's no life. And this is an issue that crosses not just Indigenous people, but all people. Doesn't matter what culture you come from, how old you are, what you believe in. I mean, we have in our communities, we have diverse spiritual and religious beliefs. It doesn't matter. There is no life without water. We're fighting for our life right now. We're fighting for our own life, but also our land's resources to even enjoy the things that we do in life that have already been infringed upon in a lot of our territories. Things like hunting, being able to have clean fish, just our ability to survive on our natural surroundings.
And never before in the history of our struggles are we faced with some of the most poisonous substances on planet Earth, such as the tar sands and the oil that is going to be pumped through pipelines coming through our territory, in which the pipeline is directly on our territory right now as we speak. They are building this pipeline through Treaty 4 territory, which spans the Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba border. So we are now at ground zero as the tar sands itself being ground zero in northern Alberta. As the pipeline is moving now east, we are now ground zero in southern Saskatchewan, in a territory known as the Last Mountain and Last Mountain Lake.
This was in our prophecies that this snake, they called it a snake coming from west to east, and that was going to come through our territories, the possibility of ruining our environment. So, and plus I do have grandchildren, all boys, 5, and I'm doing it for them. I'm standing up for them, and I'm standing up for the creation in our territory, all the animals, the insects, the fish, the birds, the medicines that still grow in our territories, the food that we grow, and so on, and the water. So there's a disconnection right now, and what our communities are being fed is jobs, the economic benefits that will bring our people, because a lot of our communities there, as all across our nations, are in oppressed states and poverty. So they're being promised through government and through the gimmicks of Phil Fontaine, his tour going across our territories and trying to. I'm not too sure what their mission is, but our people need to be told by the stories from the Chippewa people themselves exactly how devastating this is to their communities, because we are really disconnected in the East, and people don't believe you. If I was to go to my community and start telling them the devastations that's going on there, oh, here's Ronnie Radical again, he's just blowing off hot steam. But if somebody right from that territory comes and shows them and tells them what is actually going on there, speaking the truth, that's when you will engage more of our people, and especially the women. In our community, the clan mothers have a really big, strong say, and if they make a front and they make a statement, say, well, you know what, this is going to stop, and the men better damn well listen and take direction from them. So
deliberately ignorant decisions, because they know what the consequences are. They know what the people in the Treaty 6 and Treaty 8 territory are suffering from. And that's not only Indigenous folks, you know, that's the farmers and, you know, the 99%. And so when I see things like this, you know, these pipelines being approved out this way, reversals, whatever it might be, I know what that means for us, and that means further development, expansion, which means now, you know, our waters are already poisoned. It's not a if, when, where it's that way here right now. It's already a reality for us. And so when I think about what's at stake, we've gotten to that point where my children's lives are at stake. And I just really hope, walking away from this, that people here will get that. You know, this is not one of those things where we talk for nothing. We're not full of shit. It's a reality. For us, it's a reality. And our people, even more so, you know, are stuck in that position of having to choose their Indigenous ways of knowing and being, our morals and values over feeding our families, even more so now. And that should never be okay, that human rights are violated. Indigenous rights are violated in the name of resource extraction, these extreme extractive industries.
Like, we need to be out on our land, out on our territories, and if we're not occupying our territories, then terra nullius for conquest. You know, they consider it, these white people and the colonial government and the corporations, they consider this empty space. They consider this land as like undeveloped, you know? So we need to be there. We need to be using our trap lines. We need to be fishing. We need to be hunting. You know, we need to be growing our three sisters, Dunhekwa. You know, we need to be doing those things, you know, and obviously not every community can, because some people have already been so ravaged, you know, by the impacts of resource extraction and colonial capitalism, and the way that the waters have been poisoned and the lands have been poisoned, and all those things that sustain our life then have also been poisoned. So those of us who can, should, and have a responsibility to do that. But we also need to talk to each other. You know, there's a lot of people who think, and it's fair, you know, our communities are impacted by the intergenerational trauma of contact. You know, first of all, forced relocation, you know, attempted extermination, you know, we have residential schools, you know, and we've learned abuse, we've learned alcoholism, we've learned addiction, you know, we've learned to hate ourselves, you know, and these are the things that we need to overcome. And in order to do that, you know, we need to be able to like honor those relationships that we have with our territories, you know, and why we are here. But, you know, so it's really important that, like, you know, and it makes sense. There's people who they want to, you know, we want to feed our kids. We want to like be able to survive. Like, I'm not a mother, but like, I know that that's a concern from a lot of sisters and brothers of mine who do have children. They're like, we need to pay the bills. We need to keep a roof over our head, all these kinds of things, jobs. But like, we need to understand that it doesn't matter, you know, how many jobs there are on a dead planet, you know, and you know, and it's water is the most important thing that we have, not only as Ongwe Hongwe, but also as you know, as all people, right? You know, as all life is a sustenance of life, is a lifeblood of Mother Earth, and we need to take that really seriously. So we need to talk to each other, and we need to say, like, I understand, brother, sister, friend, neighbor, I understand, you know, that you want a job, or you need a job, or you need to do this, you need to do that, but like, we need to have this is our time to rise up. We need to stand up against the pipelines. We need to stand up against fracking, against the tar sands, against mining, against logging, you know, and we can't be giving like all this special attention to certain campaigns, you know, where like people are like, oh, everyone's always talking about the tar sands, but people don't want to talk about like logging that's about to start in Grassy Narrows. You know, we need to understand that these struggles are interconnected, you know, and that the struggles that people are going through who live like right beside fence line to refineries, who are usually Indigenous people or people of color, you know, if you're in an urban context, you know, that these struggles are inherently linked. and that it's all forms of resource extraction. We cannot be cutting the trees. We cannot be digging up uranium from the earth. You know, these are things we can't afford to do because it's happened for too long. You know, there's been a century of darkness. There's been a century of death, you know, and we need to end it. You know, we have a responsibility, or we can just go down.
Here we had an annual camp where we have various visitors from all over the world that come out to learn how to do actions and how to do it safely and learn the various skills that are needed, like media training and tree climbing and banner making, things like that, and also just communication and decolonizing, things like that, to help people better understand what it is we're doing and why we're doing it and create alliances.
Developing strategy is one of the big ones as well. Like whenever we do have a camp, we have an indigenous camp and a non-indigenous camp, where we have two separate caucuses that go on. The indigenous people go and separate and have their own meeting, and a settler people have their own separate meeting. Then we come back together and we discuss the issues that are most paramount to us. So the strategic stuff that we talk about is usually with the indigenous people about the resistance and how are we going to continue on this resistance. How do we build up camaraderie amongst our own people? And with the settler people, it's like, how can we help them? How can we decolonize ourselves? How can we go and teach people about the importance of decolonization? And why is it important? Why should I get more involved in this? So a lot of the settlers and then indigenous groups that do have our caucuses, when we go and have our strategy meetings, we come back with some really, really solid ideas that we can put into action. And that's a challenge that we issue to the people who come out to the camp, is when you leave, can you put this to action? And quite a few people actually do that.
Protocol we have is that free, prior, informed consent, and when people enter in, like every participant that comes to the camp has to go through the protocol, and we ask them who they are, where they're from, why they're there, how long do you plan to stay if we let you in, and you work for industry or government that's destroying our lands, and how will your visit benefit my people. People can't answer those questions, they're turned away. Like the key one is, how will your visit benefit our people? And most of the time it's industry that can't answer that question, so they usually are turned around.
And our CMP.
Yeah.
We know that we're on their largest threat list because we've actually seen the list. The BC, the province of BC, the RCMP detachment in BC does this annual, or this monthly assessment of risks that they have to face, and we know the camp is on top of that list. We also realize that the government in the last year has put together a budget of $1 million to start a program to hire 5 people to specifically deal with our camp, the provincial government. So we know that there's 5 people that are working for government to deal with the Unistoten camp problem.
The two projects of Line 9 from Enbridge and the Energy East TransCanada pipelines to bring dirty tar sands oil to the east is criminal. For a Prime Minister of Canada to approve of a project that requires 209 modifications and upgrading, to me means that there's a personal a conflict of interest in this. For sure, everybody uses oil. There's no doubt about it in this consumeristic, globalized world. But what needs to happen is more stringent and more protection for the environment upon which everybody depends on, not just Indigenous peoples. So I think what's happening now is you have a fascist government who are promoting the rights and the interests of corporations and not the people whom they're supposed to be serving. Our water, the integrity and the longevity of the land for us to plant our food and for future generations to be able to use. So the health of the land affects the health of the people. And we cannot stay quiet while a rogue government continues to push these kinds of development, which are a proven menace to society, a menace to future generations and have been proven to be unsafe. And I think what's at stake as well is the survival of the human beings, species, because our planet will be here, Mother Earth will be here long after we're extinct. And I think that the animals who have never forgotten their original teachings, they will survive more than us as human beings. The lines surround our community and go through the waters as well, Trans-Canada, and you have Gazoduc as well. And I think when we think about the struggle we had in 1990 to protect from condominium development and golf course expansion, everybody agreed, no matter what faction they came from, is the protection of the land so that future generations will be able to enjoy what we've been enjoying. Well, this is no different, and everyone needs to get on board. It's not, they try and disguise it as employment opportunities, which are just temporary employment. But at the end of the day, given the record of Enbridge, given the record of TransCanada as well, given their lack of concern, they've proven lack of concern for the environment and for the health and well-being of people, we need to stand up together and put aside our differences and work together to stop these pipelines from bringing this dirty, highly carcinogenic, highly explosive bitumen oil to the East Coast. And we are surrounded. If there is one rupture, we will feel it. Generations ago, when we were growing up in the 60s and 70s, you know, we were able to drink our water, our well water. Now it's been contaminated by all kinds of chemicals just from the mines, and this pipeline is threatening our very existence. So we need to get together and work together.
And now it's time to end that fear, to walk in peace together, and as previous speakers have said, to make changes, fundamental changes, to save the human species. Because the tar sands oil is a guarantee that the human species, that there will be no more future generations coming if everyone allows corporations like Stephen Harper's Canadian government and previous Canadian governments before that, not just Stephen Harper, but previous Canadian governments before that, who have allowed the exploitation, the theft of Indigenous people's lands and territories to, for our ancestors' blood to be spilled for what?
We as Indigenous people need to stand together, and many of us here in Kanesatake support the Indigenous people, the Goma people who are living around the tar sands, from protecting their land, protecting all our relations, like the fish and the deer and the moose and the other animals we depend on for our existence and our subsistence. We stand together. We hope that if they need us to do something on this end, that we'll be able to respond as a community, as a people, with the right to self-determination. We have said many times, and I know they have said as well, we never ceded any of our land to the colonialists. It's the colonialists who are the thieves. It's the colonialists who are committing criminal acts, and I think people need to remember that. Temporary jobs do not excuse the amount of culpability that our people will have if we accept and allow this to continue. Because, as the word said, it's temporary. But the environmental devastation that it can cause and will cause, a scientist who has advised the White House has said there is a high risk, not a 50-50 chance, but a high risk that these pipes will burst. So we need to stay strong, because our ancestors endured a lot more tougher times than we did. And they did a lot for us to have those ceremonies in our languages to protect our lands. And we need to keep that up. Do your ceremonies. Pray. Give thanks every day to the things that we do have. and make sure that your grandchildren and great-grandchildren and the future generations will be able to drink the water, fish, hunt, and be able to enjoy the land as we are doing now in this time.
Now the Line 9 is one of half a dozen or so pieces of energy infrastructure linked to the controversial Canadian tar sands, and they are proposing to reverse this pipeline because currently right now the flow goes from Portland, Maine all the way down to the refineries in Sarnia in the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people of Aamjiwnaang. And what they're proposing to do is to reverse the flow of that pipeline. And what we see behind me here is the clear cutting and kind of clearing up of the area, the overbrush that has grown up over the years over this right of way. And they're actually going to dig out this old pipeline, check it for holes and all that kind of thing. I think the disturbing thing about Line 9 and the proposal to reverse Line 9, aside from the fact that expanding on North America's ability to pump dirty tar sands crude all across our sacred indigenous lands, rivers and streams and coastal lines, is that more capacity in the pipe means more expansion in Alberta, which has dramatic consequences for local Cree and Dene people who have seen an incredible increase in cancer rates amongst their population. And of course, anytime the tar sands and other extreme forms of energy like Canada's tar sands are enabled to expand through the building or refurbishment of existing infrastructure like Line 9, this of course contributes to locking our economy in to a dirty energy economy for the next century. And if Big Oil has their way, they'll be piping tar sands through here in Quebec, in traditional Mohawk people's territory. They'll be pumping that dirty oil through here. And of course, the end goal is not about Canadian energy security, as Big Oil propaganda will have you believe. It's about, exporting this stuff from any port that they can to sell it on the international markets to the highest bidder, which, in most cases is probably China. So, we're here today just to take a look at what they're doing. So I think another scary thing about Line 9 and the proposal to reverse its flow to accommodate tar sands bitumen is the fact that the same thing happened in Michigan. They took a 40-year-old pipeline and converted it to pump tar sands through Kalamazoo, Michigan, which of course resulted in a pipeline rupture because tar sands has to be superheated, it has to be mixed with condensate, a nasty solvent in its own right, just to make this stuff flow through a pipe, and then they superheat it. And it's loaded with sand, quartz, which means that it's corrosive, more corrosive than conventional oil, which of course in a leaky old pipe like Line 9 means that the chances for a spill to happen, a pipeline rupture, are not a question of if it's going to happen, but more so a question of when is it going to happen. And as we've seen and learned from the situation in Kalamazoo River, if Line 9 ruptures anywhere near a water source, like the beautiful lake of which Line 9 goes under right here in the village of Oka, tar sands doesn't float at the top of water like conventional oil. When the condensate evaporates, tar sands sinks like a rock. And the pipeline company Enbridge has spent over $1 billion trying to clean up and remediate the Kalamazoo River. They bought out homes along the river. People have had to leave their homes as a result of that spill. And to this date, they have not remediated that river. The bottom is covered in balls of tar sands, and they have no proven methodology to be able to mitigate pipeline spills from tar sands pipelines.
Un collectif et qu'on se sent pas juste des individus séparés les uns des autres, c'est à partir de ce moment-là qu'on peut se mobiliser puis qu'on peut protéger notre territoire protéger ce qui nous revient, c'est-à-dire notre droit fondamental à un environnement sain pour nous et les générations qui vont nous suivre.
This walk is called a march of people from Mother Earth, and we started from Kakuna and we finished our walk to Kanisatake, and that walk is a walk against the project of pipelines that wants to do Trans-Canada Pipeline with Energy East, that wants to build from Cornwall to St. John's in New Brunswick a new pipeline that will carry petrol from the tar sands to make sure that they can export it to the international markets. And we're also against the pipelines that from Enbridge, line 9B, that wants to carry petrol from, they want to like upside down inverse the flow, thanks, of the pipeline and carry with that petrol from the tar sands. So we're against all that because we're totally against the expansion of the tar sand in Alberta, because like it's just a shame. It's just awful how much they violate all the rights of people there, especially the rights of the First Nation people there, Chippewa and all these nations. So we started our walk in Kakuna May 10, 2014, and we finished in Kanesatake, and we actually arrived today, Friday, June 13, in Kanesatake. Yeah, when we were in the communities, by the time that we were walking, there was people in the group that had some bicycles, so they were going just before the walk and knocking on doors and giving information of what we were doing, and like giving information of what's happening with the pipelines, what does that mean, what is the tar sands, and what means an expansion of the tar sands, and why we should be against that. And when we were arriving in the communities, we have in lots of occasions the chance to talk with some municipal elected people, like municipal councils, and also we had documentaries. We did some public projection of Wapikoni Mobile, which is a group that helps like First Nation people to make their own movies, and it's very, very interesting. We saw like blockus of the 138th road and stuff like that. So yeah, we were trying to mobilize and trying to inform all the communities that we get through, because the road that we took, it's the road that TransCanada planned to use. Right now we have a circle. So the circle, we have that in the morning and in the afternoon when we arrive in the community and when we leave a community, to make sure everything is clear for everyone. So this is the space that everyone is like having the chance to say what they want to say. And in the communities, like we are also doing some workshops. We did some workshops about also there's one of our group, it's Natasha Canapé-Fontaine, an Innu from Pessamit, and she explained us about all the First Nation history. So like we have been sensibilized, like informed about that, and yeah, so like we go to the communities, do workshops, and talk about the issue, doing some action, direct action. We went to disturb public meetings of the NEB, National Energy Board. We were there in Terrebonne to disturb the meeting, because it's totally like it's a total joke. Like they just help the industry to make sure that the people would say yes to the project instead of giving the real information. So we were there to make sure that the real information was given to the citizens.
Without the expansion, without this pipeline, my people back home, Treaty 8, Treaty 6 territories, in the folks on the front lines in those 3 tar sands deposit areas, we're already facing health impacts, respiratory illnesses, the high cancer rates, that bile duct cancer, that the Fort Chip folks are facing. We're already pulling fish from the water that have tumors hanging off of them. We're already taking moose from the land that have pus bubbles under the skin. We're already taking deer from the land that have green meat. The elders are already talking about how ducks, they don't taste the same anymore. The fish, they don't taste the same anymore. I remember that time when I could skim the top of the water and I could take my dipper from my backpack and drink that water. And that was the best kind of water that there was. I'll never experience that. My children will never experience that. We only get to hear the story of it. But I can still drink from the tap sometimes. What are my children going to face if the further expansion and development happens, which will happen if these pipelines go through? Because right now, they don't have anywhere to ship it. They don't have, the infrastructure to ship these 300, 400, 500,000 barrels per day that they want to ship. So if we don't give them that route, they can't further expand, they can't further develop. So I can only talk about where we are at currently without further expansion and development. We are already at a point where it's not uncommon to get a knock on the door from our water truck driver handing us a flyer, an issue from Health Canada, after he's just put the water in the water tank and saying, boil your water before you drink it. That's already a reality. It's already a reality living in the wetlands in the northern boreal forest where we can't take our children swimming in the lake, where folks up north in the open pit mining areas are having to time their showers. And that thought of it, babies. I have 2 children, and I have tons of pictures of my children in the kitchen sink having a bath. These babies don't get that when the chemical levels are high in the water. This is without development, without further expansion. So if these pipelines go through, what's at stake? That's one small example of what we talk about.
All of us. And there's different ways to speak up. Sometimes people think speaking up means that you have to be on the front lines, but it doesn't mean that. You can speak up by, talking to people in leadership and putting pressure on them and telling them how you feel, doing a piece of art and expressing your concern for the pipelines. There's all different ways we can speak up, but now is a time where we have to be courageous. Now is the time where we all have to be courageous and find our voice.
But at the end of the day, we need to think strategically. We need to think strategically about, what's going to work. It's like, yes, writing a petition will help to raise awareness. It's a good tactic for raising awareness. Is it going to change anything if I go to Parliament and talk to the MPs and just please, Stephen Harper, don't expand the tar sands? I think someone yesterday was saying there's a lot of talk about the strategic angle of Indigenous rights. First of all, I believe we have responsibilities, not rights. Rights are doled out by the state. They are given to you and taken away. If you're a sovereign, if you're part of a sovereign nation, then you don't have rights, you have responsibilities, and we need to honor our responsibilities. On top of that, the whole rights-based framework, I'm sorry, but it's been 522 years, and they're not gonna kiss goodbye to trillions of dollars because a few Nietzsche's got rights. That's not what they're gonna do. That's not what they're gonna do at all. So I think that's we need to not kid ourselves that the truth of the matter is the government of Canada doesn't care. The corporations don't care. What they're interested in is money. That is their bottom line, and they're willing and able to kill for it.
As a member of that territory, it is my duty as a man to take up my responsibility to protect that territory. And I am here today meeting with Frontline frontline warriors from across this country to defend our Mother Earth, to defend our sacred elements, the water, our air, and to do my best is to let people know where Ground Zero is, the fact that creation, all of creation, is being threatened at this very moment. And we all need to come together. We need to set aside our political ideas. We need to set aside our fight over money. We need to set aside our dislikes of one another and begin some form of a united front to combat these pipelines that are coming through all of our territories. There's over 180 territories of First Nations peoples in which these pipelines are going to be affected. And they're there for a reason, because governments know that the poisonous substances within those pipelines will affect every man, woman, and child living along that pipeline. Whether you are First Nation, whether you are a Canadian, whether you are white, black, Chinese, it doesn't matter. If you live along that pipeline route, the fumes from any pipeline rupture will affect every human being and every living creature upon that live close to those pipelines.
We as people need to educate ourselves and look to the future, not just keep looking at the now, but be aware of what's going to happen in the future for your children and your grandchildren. They're the ones that are going to pay the price for the decisions that are made today. And our elders always taught us that when you're making a decision right today, you're always thinking about 5 years, 10 years down the road on how that your decision is going to impact the future generation.
We also have to be careful with the language that we use. There's a lot of First Nations people. We're just gathering here over the last couple of days, and I've heard it over and over again by people when they stand up and talk about these the tar sands, bitumen, the proposed pipelines that they want to kind of push through right to the east. We have the Line 9 which was approved by the National Energy Board, surprisingly, and the Energy East pipeline, which is being proposed to come across as well. We know what National Energy Board's got in their agenda. We already know what their answer is going to be. They're not really interested in hearing the people. They're only interested in going through the process to say that they've consulted the communities and they've heard them and they've addressed them, and this is how they've addressed them. We're not interested in hearing what they've got to say or do. What we're interested in hearing from is the people themselves. And we're asking the people, what are you going to do? Are you actually serious about stopping these guys? Are you going to sit around and keep using that language where you're saying, oh, when that pipeline comes through, or that oil that's going to be coming through that pipeline is going to come from our territories? We can't continue to use that language because you're basically creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. And we don't want that. That's language that is toxic to the fight.
I think it's really important for people to understand that this threat to all our safety and well-being and the Earth's is going to produce a planet that is dead. It's not only affecting us at the grass, the grassroots level or the land level, the waters, but the biosphere. The biosphere that protects the Earth from all kinds of radiation that is out there in the universe. So we need to think about that this is the reality and the possibility and the very real possibility that there's going to be a dead planet. And in a dead planet you cannot have jobs. In a dead planet you cannot eat. There'll be no money. You can have all the money you want in the world, but you're not going to be able to eat it if you cannot grow food, if you cannot drink the water. These are the things that we need to start assimilating global society into the indigenous philosophy of thinking for future generations and thinking about that we are not separate from nature. We are part of nature. It's part of us as much as we are a part of them. And so the kind of development that the tar sands industry is using or is doing today is contributing to this dead planet.
Sa huna wana ngwe unum toharake suquayatism wasakohrori unquessum a wahorum adoni serateke nihra araksaa antsisawana tumhase ohnasawaere te ayetsilio netekeniase ohnare kowa ose opire ohrunya tene aona ki aseria onratste todims raudinumquis ohrunyate ne kayanquire yutquira quarishmi ohrunyate tatnum ti yayotte karako onyankare yohrohara ki aona tatnum kayanquire ne yaka ohmste ti umtumtatenhe ne okwehmwe raunum tasmum a tatnum ti kanyatarahrunya tinugwane karistati ohnyare kowa